Right now, as we record this in late August 2026, there is a parent in the UK who was waiting in line at a charity baby bank just to get a free school uniform for their teenager.
Right.
But then that exact same parent might go home and casually order a premium single-serving hot pot delivered directly to their door.
It's totally, completely fragmented.
It is. I mean, the American and global consumer is frankly making some completely contradictory financial choices right now. And the traditional models we use to track how people spend and save, they are just buckling under the weight of these weird new realities.
Yeah, they really are.
So our stack of sources today is focused entirely on mapping where the money is actually flowing right now. We are looking at the sudden disappearance of the apex predator of the housing market, this bizarre paradox in retail real estate, and the impending death of one of the internet's oldest gig work platforms.
And if you look at all of that together, I mean, the overarching theme binding these stories is just this violent structural
The
recalibration.
mechanics are just shifting entirely.
Exactly. The mechanical systems that defined that whole post-pandemic era are unwinding right in front of us. We're witnessing massive shifts in where institutional money is choosing to park itself, how consumer pressure is forcing these bizarre behavioral trade-offs, and how artificial intelligence is quietly rewriting the fundamental economics of human labor.
Well, let us start with the macro picture, specifically this kind of alphabet soup of economic labels that is being thrown around Washington right now. Earlier this month, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually declared that the much-discussed K-shaped economy is officially over.
Right, the K-shape.
Yeah, just for anyone needing a quick visualization, the K-shape was that pandemic-era model where higher-income households pulled sharply ahead on the top arm of the K, while lower-income households kind of slid downward on the bottom leg. But the new Treasury claim is that we have transitioned into a C-shaped economy. The argument there is that the bottom end of wage earners are finally clawing their way back, kind of curring upward to converge with the rest of the market.
And they actually have some solid math to back that up.
Yeah.
Bank of America's July 2026 data provides the foundation for that Treasury claim. So lower-income households actually saw their after-tax wages grow at a 5.2% annual pace last month.
Which is pretty significant considering that wage growth actually surpassed the gains seen by higher-income households for the first time since December 2024.
Right. And furthermore, actual spending by those lower-income households grew by 5.4% year over year in July. So their spending growth is actually now outpacing middle-income consumers.
Okay, hold on, though. Because 5.2% wage growth, I mean, that sounds fantastic on a Treasury Department whiteboard. But if I'm walking through a grocery store, that 5% raise was completely eaten by the price of eggs like a year ago. Are people actually feeling the benefits of this so-called C-shape recovery? Because looking at the July FICO credit data, it feels like consumers are aggressively bailing water out of a leaky boat.
It does feel that way on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, because that FICO data shows slight upticks in 90-plus day delinquencies for both mortgage and auto loans, specifically among consumers with lower credit scores. So people are apparently making more money, but they are simultaneously falling behind on these major structural payments.
Well, the leak in that financial boat is almost entirely isolated to housing costs.
Yeah.
The average first-time homebuyer's monthly mortgage payment hit $2,563 as of this summer.
Just for context, that single monthly obligation represents a 57% increase since April 2019, which drastically outpaces the 30% general inflation rate over that exact same period.
Yeah, the housing squeeze is just immense.
Yeah.
So the Bank of America economists actually noted that this intense housing pressure could even push us past a C-shape and into an X-shaped economy.
An X-shape meaning that lower income spending growth persistently accelerates past higher income spending and just crosses over entirely.
You got it. Because the demographic reality is that renters in their 20s are facing this intense shelter inflation, while Gen X consumers are caught in what's essentially a generational vice.
Right. Those consumers in their mid-40s to early 60s who are simultaneously supporting adult children who can't afford rent, aiding their aging parents, and somehow trying to fund their own retirements all at once.
It is a massive squeeze.
So if the generational squeeze on housing is that intense, where does that leave the actual residential real estate market? Because the data shows a massive sudden reversal here. For the last few years, the all-cash buyer was basically the ultimate apex predator of the housing market. Like if you needed a bank mortgage, you simply could not compete.
No, they would just swoop in and take it.
Right. But in the first 4 months of 2026, the share of cash sales dropped to 31.4%, which is down from 32.3% during the same period in 2025. It kind of feels like the VIP line at an exclusive club just vanished, and regular people with finance mortgages are finally allowed to just walk through the front door.
Well, finance buyers are gaining traction strictly because the frantic pace of price appreciation has finally cooled off.
hmm
I mean, national median home prices rose just 0.2% annually, which is a stark contrast to that 15.4% peak we witnessed back in 2021.
And when properties sit on the market even just a few days longer and inventory slowly increases, the psychology of the seller completely changes. They begin prioritizing the security of actually closing a deal over holding out for an aggressive, no contingency cash offer.
Exactly. Real estate agents are reporting that buyers who get fully pre-underwritten by their lenders are successfully beating out cash offers, which is a dynamic that was functionally impossible during the buying frenzy of 2022.
Wait, let us clarify that term for a second. When you say a buyer is fully pre-underwritten, what does that actually look like in practice for a regular consumer who is just trying to buy a house?
It is a massive step beyond just having a standard pre-approval letter. Being fully pre-underwritten means the bank has already processed the buyer's income, they've verified their assets, and they've cleared their debt profile through the actual underwriting department before they even make an offer on a house.
So the only missing variable is literally just the appraisal of the specific property itself.
Exactly. So for a seller, a pre-underwritten financed offer carries almost the exact same closing certainty as a cash offer, which completely neutralizes the advantage that institutional cash buyers used to hold.
But if institutional cash is suddenly fleeing the residential starter home market, that capital did not just evaporate. Where is all that money going?
It is piling into commercial real estate, which is experiencing a completely different phenomenon than the residential sector right now. Based on tracking data from JLL, bidding for commercial real estate in June posted its strongest monthly improvement in a year.
And July actually recorded the second highest count of unique bidders in the entire 5-year history of that JLL index. Which is wild because the anticipated massive wave of commercial distress and widespread office defaults that analysts kept warning about, it simply never materialized at a systemic scale.
No, it didn't. So investors are looking at the stabilizing yields in commercial real estate and actively increasing their exposure, but they're specifically targeting retail and industrial properties.
I understand retail, but what is driving the sudden rush into industrial properties? Are we just talking about giant warehouses for e-commerce packaging?
Well, e-commerce is definitely a factor, but the primary driver is the reindustrialization trend. Companies are aggressively expanding physical manufacturing closer to the United States to shorten lead times and essentially eliminate those supply chain risks we saw exposed over the last 4 years.
And that reshoring effort pushed manufacturing leasing up 27% year over year. But on the retail side, property is highly competitive for kind of the opposite reason. Current owners of strip malls and retail centers are seeing such robust returns that they simply refuse to sell, which creates this bottleneck of available property for investors.
Right, nobody wants to let go of a performing asset.
By the way, if you love tracking these specific kinds of market mechanisms and consumer shifts, you can find Financial Candy, Brain Candy, and classic audiobooks over at clarinhoratio.com. But looking at those retail spaces, if commercial investors are betting heavily on physical stores, we really need to examine what consumers are actually doing inside those buildings. And the contradiction between commercial investor confidence and actual consumer behavior is startling.
It really is a paradox.
Yeah, on Tuesday, Dick's Sporting Goods suffered a historic 30% plunge in its stock price. Their core business is actually growing, but they are drowning in excess sneaker and apparel inventory at their recently acquired Foot Locker business. So they are being forced into heavy discounting just to move product off the shelves.
And the microeconomic data reveals a consumer base that is making incredibly ruthless trade-offs regarding physical goods. The back-to-school season provides the perfect illustration of this squeeze. So in the UK, parents are increasingly turning to charity baby banks.
Which is wild because traditionally, those banks supplied diapers and infant formula, but they now actively stock school uniforms for children all the way through secondary school. Families are literally coordinating with neighbors to bulk buy supermarket bundles just to afford basic clothing.
Yeah, local councils are fielding massive requests for school uniform grants worth up to roughly $268 per child. Consumers are just aggressively slashing their budgets on traditional retail staples like athletic apparel and school clothes.
But here is where it gets really interesting. Consumers are pinching pennies on daily apparel, they're coordinating grocery runs and standing in line for charity uniforms, but they were throwing massive amounts of money at dining convenience. Look at the Chinese hot pot chain Haidilao.
Oh, yeah.
Their shares jumped 7% in Hong Kong on Wednesday after they reported that their delivery revenue exploded by over 121%. They brought in $2.8 billion in total revenue just in the first half of the year. People are sacrificing new sneakers for their kids, but they will happily pay a premium for a single-serving hot pot delivered directly to their living room.
Well, Haidilao's massive revenue jump relies on a very specific operational mechanism. They are actively pivoting away from solely relying on their traditional, massive sit-down restaurant spaces. In fact, their core dining room business actually saw a 4% revenue decline.
So instead, they are leaning heavily into local delivery hubs and specialized formats like food stall hot pot and quick service sushi. These single restaurant models require significantly less capital overhead, and they cater directly to the fragmented on-demand dining preferences of modern consumers.
Exactly. The margin they lose on the premium sit-down dining experience is completely eclipsed by the sheer volume of rapid delivery orders.
But that insatiable demand for rapid delivery and instant gratification services, it does not happen by magic. It requires immense amounts of data routing in the background. Someone actually has to process the logistics, label the menus, and train the algorithms making those deliveries efficient. Which brings us to a fundamental changing of the guard in the gig economy.
Yeah, the big one.
Amazon is officially pulling the plug on Mechanical Turk on September 30, 2026.
Mechanical Turk is literally a foundational piece of internet history. It launched back in 2005 based on a concept Jeff Bezos termed artificial intelligence.
Meaning the premise was to basically farm out microtasks to human workers for pennies per task. If a computer system in the mid-2000s could not identify a stop sign in a photo or transcribe a heavily accented audio clip, a human on Mechanical Turk would just do it.
Right. It functioned as this cheap, invisible human bridge over the capability gaps in early machine learning. For 2 decades, it was essentially the engine room of the gig economy.
But the immediate question is, if Mechanical Turk is shutting down next month, who is actually doing the foundational data labeling required to feed the current AI boom? We are churning through training data at an unprecedented rate to run everything from delivery algorithms to generative language models, yet the oldest pipeline for human data processors is closing its doors.
Well, the industry has largely shifted to specialized startups like Scale AI and Merker, which recruit highly targeted pools of data workers for specific technical tasks. But the ultimate irony of Mechanical Turk's demise was actually uncovered in a recent Swiss academic study.
This is the study that found that up to 46% of the human workers operating on Mechanical Turk were secretly using generative AI models to complete their assigned tasks anyway.
Yes. The platform that was designed to use humans to train computers was quietly overrun by humans, using computers to automate the human work, and they were just pocketing the gig economy wages in the process.
That is incredible. That is the equivalent of a student using a calculator to write the answer key for a math test and then selling the answer key back to the teacher. That close loop of AI doing the work of humans pretending to be AI shows exactly how aggressively automated pipelines are replacing traditional gig work. And we are seeing this rapid automation rewrite entire entertainment and production models as well.
Oh, absolutely.
In the first quarter of 2026 alone, the Chinese market produced roughly 128,000 vertical short dramas, and over 95% of those dramas were generated utilizing artificial intelligence. Producers are utilizing a fail-fast method where they just flood the market with incredibly cheap AI-generated content to capture fleeting consumer attention, and then they only put marketing dollars behind the specific titles that algorithmically gain traction.
Because the capital required to test a market hypothesis in entertainment is dropped nearly to zero. But as the upfront cost of AI production plummets, the physical infrastructure required to support those AI models is becoming a massive financial and political flashpoint.
Because OpenAI is currently valued at $852 billion as they prepare for an expected 2027 initial public offering, and they have publicly stated a goal to spend $600 billion on compute infrastructure by 2030. Yet they are seeing a significant wave of executive departures, most notably their head of data centers, Chris Malone. Let us pause on that phrase, compute infrastructure. Are we just talking about building massive warehouses full of humming servers, or is this a more complex bottleneck? Because if a company is valued at nearly $1 trillion, losing the head of data centers right before an IPO seems like a glaring red flag.
Well, compute infrastructure refers to the physical reality of the cloud. It means securing the land, the specialized microchips, the massive water supplies required for cooling systems, and most importantly, the electricity.
And Chris Malone's departure arrives precisely as the sheer energy requirements for these data centers are turning local zoning board meetings into geopolitical battlegrounds. Political strategists are flagging data center energy consumption as a major sleeper issue for the upcoming midterm elections because these facilities are heavily taxing local power grids.
Yeah, the digital AI economy is slamming directly into the physical limits of the electrical grid.
So, synthesizing all these disparate threads, the anxiety surrounding the broader economy seems kind of misplaced. The system isn't buckling, it is just engaged in a massive, aggressive recalibration. We are tracking a consumer base that is shifting away from the K-shaped inequality model into a messy C-shaped reality, where lower income wages are rising even as housing costs absorb those hard-fought gains.
And we are seeing the real estate market transition power from the cash-heavy institutional investor back to the financed homebuyer, while commercial developers bet big on physical industrial reshoring.
Plus, the gig economy is officially graduating from humans clicking pictures of stop signs on Mechanical Turk to fully automated AI production pipelines, testing global entertainment hypotheses in real time.
The impending closure of Mechanical Turk really serves as the perfect historical marker for this exact moment in time. For 21 years, the technology industry utilized human beings to compensate for the limitations of computers. But now, as the AI models take on those capabilities natively and the traditional gig economy fundamentally transforms, we are facing a much stranger dilemma. If human data labelers are being replaced, the next question isn't just about lost gig work jobs, it is about data pollution.
What happens to the global digital economy in 5 years when the AI systems are exclusively training themselves on the subtle mistakes and hallucinations generated by other AI systems, with no human bridge left to correct the course?
Exactly. How will we define the real value of human time and attention then?
That is a deeply unsettling yet fascinating place to leave it. The financial landscape is moving faster than the economic textbooks can keep up, but we will keep tracking exactly where the money flows next. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.